And isn't it amazing?
Yes.
Look at that wonderful painting. It's had such joy in it. It's really great. Anyway, I'm going to call you up to, and I'm going to ask if you have 5 poems of the issue. I can't let you read 5 poems because we have a huge number of people who have to read. And so I'm going to ask you to pick one poem from your poems that are in the issue and read that one poem. And then if we have time after when we're doing the open reading, if you want to read the second poem directly, we'll open reading, that's okay. But we don't want to kill people. And so we want to be able to let them read one poem piece, and that's the easiest thing to do. And then if there are extra poems after we have the little reception, then you can come back and you can come back and read the poem in the other poem in the open reading, if you sign up outside. Anyway, our first reader today is going to be Susan Amsterdam from Midland Park, New Jersey. Susan, our ex-TAP coordinator. Let's welcome Susan.
Excuse me, for those who are stepping up on stage, there's a small little step, so please.
Just watch. And we probably better off going the other side because Maria's feet are
After Esta. Thank you for your kind words, Maria. It was a wonderful 25 and a half years here working with Maria, and actually we have almost no turnover here in the office. Sue has been here for a long time, and Jane, who retired, had been here for over 15 years. So it's a good place to work. And Madeline, I'm sure you'll find a home here and be here for many, many years also. And it's all due to Maria's leadership and leadership qualities that nobody really wants to go. She just lets us do our thing. We all work here because we love it. And Maria just lets us loose and says, just do it. And we all have, and we've just enjoyed it. And as I say, it's nice to be back and see a lot of you. Anyway, I will not babble any longer. Let me just read you my poem. It's called Antique Map. I always wanted an antique map with intricate, esoteric symbols. I wanted to own the exotic unknown, if only a reproduction. My husband wasn't interested, so I said I didn't need an antique map. I only wanted one. There was no need involved. I could live without it. But in my new house, where I live alone, what I want is what I have. I bought my antique map. Thank you.
I probably should have had people sign in. Is Tamara Ashdod here? Tamara? No. Okay. So our next reader is Susan Lembo-Balick from Newfoundland, New Jersey.
And I just have to echo what Susan Amsterdam says. I tell Maria often that she is the best boss ever, and she is, and she does let us loose, and that is one of the best things because she trusts us, and she does let us work very independently. It's one of the many, many things I love about Maria. Okay. This is a poem that I wrote 4 years ago, just before my father died. So just to give you a little context. Letter to my brother. I know you wish you didn't live so far away, that you weren't so busy at your job and you could make it back to Jersey more than once or twice a year. It's okay, don't feel guilty. I could have made the same decision 12 years ago, stayed in the Midwest after Dan got laid off, and sometimes I'm jealous that you live on another coast, that you don't have to be smack in the middle, though I know sometimes you get stuck there anyway. What I need from you is to believe in me more, to stop lecturing me, judging me, to stop getting all crazy because I mentioned that I might take Dad to the acupuncturist for his bad shoulder. I know I don't do things the way you would. I can't get Dad to shave or eat well or stop his dumpster diving at the apartments across the street. But I love him, really love him. And I've raised my family in 5 rooms in this apartment above our childhood home so I could be here for Mom and now for Dad. Because Dad asked me a long time ago when I was just a girl in pigtails to take care of him in his old age. And I'm here doing what he asked. And you've got to give me points for that. You've got to give me points for loving Dad as much as I do and seeing this thing through to 100 or 108 or 115 or however long I'm blessed to feel responsible for this beautiful, stubborn, proud Italian man who raised us to do the right thing.
Okay, our next reader is Stanley H. Barkin from Merrick, New York, and I just want to say one thing about, I'm not going to really introduce people, but I want to introduce Stanley because Stanley spent so much of his life doing work for other people and other poets, running cross-cultural communications press, organizing readings across the world, bringing poets from other countries here, having us translated by translators in other countries, and he just has done an amazing work for poets and poetry, and I think we don't often acknowledge all the work that people do. And I want to acknowledge my friend and a person I admire very much, Stanley Barkin.
Excuse me, please adjust the microphone to your comfort. Okay, thank you.
Mille grazie, amica mia. It's always a pleasure, a privilege to be here with Laura and Maria and Susan and what was wonderful contributors to Paterson Literary Review. I'm going to read Changes. It's on page 78 if you want to follow. I am not done with my changes, wrote Stanley Kunitz. Pumpernickel pushes open the door, mewing for attention, as she heads for what used to be the scale next to where I'm sitting. The bathroom has been updated. Now the 1920s plumbing is out, and the new pipes under the tub and the totally new shower are in. But the black and white small checkerboard tiles are still the same, but added to the shower. And now there are mirrors on the door and facing walls reflecting infinity. But the large black and white scale has been replaced by a small white one, now tucked under the antique unit for books and toiletries, which Pumpernickel cannot sit upon. And the old pine Mexican medicine chest with its tonala tiles, faded silvering, and double doors placed over the original chest has also, with new silvered mirror, been replaced. Pumpernickel is set in her ways, not very good at adapting to changes. Now she comes in mewing, looks around, and leaves with her long bushy tail up, swishing. Just one comment. If anyone here is interested in being at the Yale Club, either as a guest or a feature, please see me in the back. Okay? Thank you very much.
Our next reader is Bruce Bennett from Aurora, New York. Bruce Bennett.
I was really thrilled to be in the magazine. I haven't read everything yet, but I've read a lot, and it's wonderful. So it's a privilege to be here. My poem is called Degeneration. and it's on page 159. It's ALS, he said. It's getting worse. A year or so ago, she was on crutches. Now it's the wheelchair. It's progressing fast, but she's amazing. She's so optimistic. I'd asked about her. I had met the class one time before. I wondered, but didn't ask. This time I had to know. She so stood out. She was so cheerful, so enthusiastic. She is a sophomore. They are mostly seniors, accepted by their colleges already, transitioning, about to start new lives, all set to strike off into different worlds. Everything's changing. Everything's exciting and scary, too. I overheard them talking about their jobs, their majors, what they hope for, those ways they must be talking every day, while promising they will, whatever happens, be back, stay friends. They won't forsake each other. Those are the things that she is bound to hear. What must she feel? That's what I keep on thinking. She doesn't even know if she'll get through another term. The chance that she'll reach college seems almost nil, and surely she must know that. And yet her teacher says she's optimistic. Sometimes I think the courage we can't see must be enough to break a stone god's heart. Thank you. I'm coming from upstate New York, where at the SUNY Upstate Medical Center, there's an annual magazine called The Healing Muse. And this is just too good an opportunity. Reading the literary review, I kept seeing poems that I think the poets would want to know about the Healing Muse. So if you Google it, it's a terrific magazine. It comes out once a year. This is not competition. Thank you. Thank you.
Oops. I have good taste. Okay. Our next reader is, and I said I wasn't going to introduce people, but I will say one word about our next reader, who is Laura Boss from Forum Park, New Jersey. And Laura is the editor of Lips Magazine and the founder of Lips Magazine. And she started it in 1980, so she's been toiling in the fields of poetry for a very long time. Let's welcome Laura Boss.
I'm so happy to be here with all my good poetry friends today. Too many of them maybe to mention. Probably I should mention them, but I'm not going to because my poem is so long. But I do have to thank Maria for being the editor for so many years of such a really fine magazine, PLR. Okay. I do have to thank Sandley too. Okay, all right. How Our Children Live. Written the day after the terrorist attack near Stuyvesant High School, October 2017. Years ago, Years ago, the week after 9/11, my 6-year-old granddaughter sits in her suburban first grade class as the principal phones her home to say Amanda's desk mate's father, a soccer coach for his son's team, is still missing. That father will never coach another soccer team again, and each year my granddaughter and all of us listens for his name read on TV at the 9/11 memorial. After her parents split, my granddaughter at 8 moves with her mother and younger sister to live with her other grandmother, her abuela, in an immaculate apartment on a sometimes drive-by shooting street in Washington Heights. My granddaughter tells me not to point at anyone when I pick her up in my car for a rare jaunt to the Met. He could be a gang member, have a gun, and think you're pointing at him. In 8th grade, my granddaughter is thrilled to be accepted at Stuyvesant High School, not only because it is such a top public high school, but also because it has a swimming pool, though like many teenage girls, she eventually decides to forego swimming in favor of her hair not looking tangled and waterlogged each day, and instead becomes active in Aspera and involved with social justice in the Hispanic school community and beyond. At graduation, my granddaughter wins the poetry prize at Stuyvesant, but decides to be a computer science major at Harvard, where she has won a full scholarship. I see her trying to have a life without the struggles of a freelance poet like me, or her separated parents who have each fallen into unexpected unemployment disaster, as Amanda continues to tutor kids free in the inner city. Last May, my granddaughter's graduation from Harvard is a day that goes into our memory scrapbooks, hers, of course, her mother's, her abuela's, and mine. I wish her father, my son, could also be here, but I try not to focus on his absence. My granddaughter introduces us to her new and possibly first boyfriend. He brings her flowers and seems slightly nervous, meeting her family for the first time. My granddaughter has warned me not to ask him any questions, and whether it is because he is Vietnamese and she's afraid I'll embarrass her by asking anything personal, or even worse, possibly politically incorrect, I think she has probably said this to all her family here today. But I like him immediately because he arrives with a bouquet of tiger lilies for her, and he's summa cum laude from a nearby fine college. And though I don't know anything about him, summa cum laude tells me he's not just bright, but also conscientious. When she started college, I told Amanda no one escapes without getting heartbroken. But I know, like so many other random things, love is one more thing I have no control over, though I send a message to the gods of love to keep my granddaughter safe from the end of love with all its emotional hell. My granddaughter has signed a contract to work in the internet field. She will move to San Francisco, and though I will miss her, her future seems secure, unless some random plane crash, earthquake, flood, disease, accident finds her. And I know there's obviously no guaranteed safety in our world. Today I read where the terrorist, a father of 3 children, rammed his rental Home Depot truck into a Stuyvesant school bus near the school and into the same running path my granddaughter once ran with her classmates, rammed his rental Home Depot truck into that school bus where 2 students were hurt, where 8 cyclists died, 15 wounded, chaos where some students looked from out upper floor windows and took photos with their cell phones. Seeing kids running to safety, mothers and nannies running with strollers, seeing crushed bikes, spokes dented and bloody, the worst terrorist attack in the city since 9/11. And I think how random terrorism or just violence is something our children always live with, though try not to focus on, how by just minutes or even years we are lucky or unlucky, that it could have been us, our children, grandchildren on that bus or pathway at that moment as a truck hurtled toward us. Still, I think our children will continue to have the sweet toughness and resilience of one of the injured students on that Stuyvesant school bus yesterday, who despite his wounds returns to his classes at Stuyvesant today, trying not to let the attack ruin his record, still trying for 100% attendance. Yes, this is how our children live. This is how we all now live. Thank you.
Okay, our next reader is Amanda Bradley, and we have her listed as Factoryville, Pennsylvania, but I know she's moved to Beacon, New York. So let's welcome Amanda Bradley.
It's a real honor to be included in the magazine and to be here among such great company. Thanks to Maria, as always. Okay, so I'm reading a poem called What I Wanted. I'm coming down from weeks of a manic episode. I am in Maine, the ocean licking my ear. a warm breeze breathing on my neck through open windows. My dog is covered in sea salt on a quilt on a couch in a secluded cottage surrounded by spirea and Nootka roses. 25 years ago, I kept saying I would move here. I knew exactly what I wanted then. I wanted a complex past full of dangerous pain that I could fathom then, but not entirely feel. I wanted to know myself the way I imagined only suffering could show me. I wanted you to take me down into me. That you actually did is my life's miracle. Without you, this knowledge of my own exquisite brutality would be only an idea. Because of you, our brutality is muscle memory, an ache that reaches into my inability to cry, into my will to know, will to power, my will to survive myself, into my sex. There are no clocks in this cottage. There is only low tide and high tide, moon and sun, ants and flies and bees. I am glad to have finally found myself in Maine. When I look inside in this moment, I see nothing that is not there. This is what I wanted.
Our next reader is Claire E. Brown from Boonton, New Jersey.
Thanks. This is called Incident. It would be much too dangerous to tell you about Katie O'Rourke. Instead, I'll tell you about Mary Kay Landing and how we resented her, how in our plaid skirts and saddle-shoed mediocrity she outshowed us when she invited us to her soiree, how we had to learn the word soiree and how to pronounce soiree, and that we had to attend in our best attire with white gloves and pleated skirts and carry lipsticks in our purses. Oh, how we buzzed. The boys were alone when the incident happened, when the hordes went amok, when they knew Katie O'Rourke, sweet wild-haired Katie, who had not been invited to the soiree since the top drawer were asked, had her period. The boys, ravenous, 7th grade boys, took turns smelling her seat, grinning and laughing, eager to know women's secrets, giving in to animal instinct. When we girls told Katie later, she hid it in her hair and cried. We left for the soiree clad in cotton. Thank you.
I think we have this name spelled incorrectly. Anne-Marie Bruman? Isn't it Broom? Brum, right? I knew it was wrong, and I'm thinking, what is it? What is it? And Anne-Marie is from New York City. Let's welcome Anne-Marie.
Okay, thanks to Maria, a great poet, and also congratulations on another great issue. I've been reading this for many years now, and it never disappoints. Okay, my poem is called The Media Widow. I lived in the crevices of your life, somewhere between Channel 2 programming, the Film Academy, and your latest documentary. Like a gecko, I took on the colors of your culture, laid down my protest signs when you said I was too visible. I watched and waited while you pitched at Cannes, smiled at German producers, hoping to snare some funding for your next feature. Like a loyal caryatid, I supported your ideas and reined in your wildest plans with tactful hints. You carefully rationed your time between me and the camera, yet I was content to sit in the shadows of your screenings. Last year, I applauded loudly as you received a Lifetime Achievement Award. In the audience of the heart, I deserved a front row seat. Thank you.
Before I introduce the next person, I forgot to do what my secretary reminded me to do, and it is to mention that the Allen Ginsberg Awards are open and there are rules on the table, and I hope you'll enter your poems in the competition for the Allen Ginsberg Awards. The next reader is Fran Caston from Greenport, New York. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. It's been a while since I've seen you.
It's been a long time.
Something funny to share is that last night I was in a section of Brooklyn and I saw many streets with the same names as streets in Manhattan, and one of them was Cornelia Street.
Oh,
And I don't know if Maria remembers this, but
Of course, I remember I got lost.
we were all supposed to read at the Cornelia Street Cafe, and I guess it was before the days or the beginning of GPS.
Right, I kept going, no, it was GPS,
It was
and he
GPS.
kept sending me to Brooklyn. And I'm driving around Brooklyn, I'm going, I'm lost, I'm screaming.
So not that I didn't believe you, but now I know there really is a Cornelia Street.
Cornelia Street. Believe me.
Okay, so I'm delighted to be here, and I'm going to read my poem called After the Last Kiss. Now that my mate has died, my body no longer has eyes to see its loveliness. It has no mouth to arouse it or give it comfort. It has no skin for its skin, so it takes its own hands, my hands, as if this small pair could duplicate his, places them just above my breasts, draws them away from each other toward my shoulders like a masseuse. But I am not soothed. Wherever I go, to a small gathering of friends or a stadium full of strangers, I search for him, though I'll never find him the way we found each other once and became a single body, only death could part.
Okay, our next reader is Maria Seferati from Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania.
Thank you. I'm a newbie to PLR, and I discovered your work, Maria, through the Writer's Almanac, which I subscribe to, and I read some of your poems there, and then Googled you, and found out about your newsletter, so I signed up for your newsletter, and I'm always delighted when I see it in my inbox, and then through that found out about the Paterson Literary Review. So it's an honor to be included in this issue. Thank you. My poem is called Boy Choir. No heat in the church. The parish is a relic only. Its bones remain. Catholic diaspora, down to one Sunday, Mass in Vietnamese. The elevated train, a few yards away, shakes the windows till they shudder. On Saturdays, the priest lets them use the loft for free. They practice in the morning, wearing coats and scarves, singing, "I wonder as I wander." The sopranos wonder, what time is lunch? The altos pray, their acne clears up by Christmas. The director ignores the draft that tries to quiet the candle, lit and patient at the altar. He conducts silent night, eyes closed, hands hushed. The boys can see their breath. At break time, the angelic singers are mystified by the glowing light from their iPhones, sporting earbuds while they snack. They don't notice the stained glass nearby, a life frozen in time and color, where Mary's eyes neither gaze at the gifts of the Magi, nor the wonder of her newborn son, but turn outside to the blacktop where the junkies come to congregate and shiver. Thank you.
Okay, and next we have Maria Crimmy from Hackettstown, New Jersey. Let's welcome Maria.
Thank you, Maria. The title is Penn Station. Some of you may have heard this before. Apologies. I've been to cathedrals, sat quietly, feeling humbled and holy, as an invisible organist played, sending shivers through me, more sexual than divine. I've been on a windward beach in Hawaii, where the sunset glowed as it settled into an ocean saturated in color, and as the sun cowered below the horizon, a coral-colored light poured over the water, the people, the sand, so physically startling, even my husband had to shut up and stop proving his point. I've been at the deathbeds of 3 people, observing their breath so closely that I struggled to get enough air into my own lungs, considering the breadth of their lives and wondering if maybe I was more a voyeur than a daughter or daughter-in-law. In Penn Station, I found the divine, sitting on the floor, my back against the wall, finishing my falafel, crushing the aluminum in my hands. I noticed a poem carved into the marble wall across from me. I rose and walked toward the writing till I could focus, standing with Whitman's words. The crowd flowed around me like wind over a wing. Disconnected departures and arrivals blared over the din. I spun, slowing down the crush of the rushed hour as a note from a violin sang from another corridor to keep me still. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next reader is Kenneth DiMaggio, West Hartford, Connecticut.
Thank you. I'm going to read a poem called Memoirs of a Mama's Boy. So bright was the purple and strawberry of her double-knit polyester that I joked how airplanes at 10,000 feet could see Mom in one of her pantsuits in the dark. So heavy was the mascara on her eyelids that by the end of the day they began to peel and crack like an ancient Roman fresco that still stayed true to its hooked Sicilian nose. And if my mother proudly eschewed cosmetic surgery, she just as proudly wore her cosmetic and couture disasters, especially in a suburban neighborhood where the colors were pastel, Protestant, and plaid. And so, when her son pierced an ear before it was male fashionable, wore a leather jacket with a Harley-Davidson logo, which he never rode beyond a Stingray bicycle. After she shook her beehive hairdoed head and crossed her heart pink polyester arms that could probably be seen from outer space, she hugged me, gave me a kiss, and then said, "Be whatever you want, Kenneth. Just don't ever change your nose."
I think I know that lady. Our next reader is Tony Glogler, and Tony is from Richland Hill, New York. Is he here? Tony? Not here. I'm sorry. He's a wonderful poet. Kyle Gregory, Watertown, New York.
Thank you. This is love. My mother caressed with her lover's closed fist, imprinting his desire on her cheeks, her legs, her face. Her feet, unable to hold her up to the weight of my father's yearning, arcing through the air, crashing down on her head, showing her how deeply and wholly he cares. I am the child, a baby who cries at the top step. My father, eyes lit in brown and red, seemingly flying like an angel with all the scorching hate burning in his face. The distance closing, I am scooped up from the landing and tossed down the stairs to lie next to my mother, so fully loved, into still unconsciousness. We're both lucky to live today, but we never speak of the past, both trying desperately to figure out the right way to show love, the right way to be loved, the right way to know love and be free of the old love. Thank you.
Next, Elaine Gutterman, Princeton Junction, New Jersey. Elaine? Oh, where? Oh, here. Okay. Come along, Elaine.
You got to me before I got here, but fortunately not. The poem is called Alice Grave Nil, which means in Latin, nothing is heavy with wings. Light-hearted, appearance-oriented, kiss was meringue and lace, while I preferred rye bread and fleece. I liked tough, she sought grace. When I battled cancer through chemo, then surgery, she came with me on walks, generous with her company. When I shared details, eager to be honest, she said, I'm not brave like you, I'd go stiff with dread. 3 years later, her turn to do battle. The course much worse. We bonded as she managed a tour de force. She stayed light-hearted, stylish in wigs, walked in cold or heat, never gave in to self-pity. Her courage is what we keep.
Feel free to adjust the microphone to yourself, please. Thank you.
It's not right, John?
Folks are walking up and, mic's here, they're here.
Oh, all right, so we have to speak into the microphone. I hope I've been doing that all along. Don't tell me if I haven't. Next, I want to introduce Raymond P. Hammond from Beacon, New York. And I also want to say about Raymond that he's the editor and publisher of New York Quarterly Press. And he is just an amazing editor, an amazing publisher, and he's done so much for so many of us. Let's welcome Raymond Hammond.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for everything you've done for me along the way. I wouldn't be here without you in a lot of ways. My poem is called Seminary, and it's from a manuscript collection of religious poems. 1. My dad had been a Navy SEAL, so I could snorkel before I could really swim. And we, as a family, my dad, my mom, and me, would go to Mountain Lake, where years later they would film Dirty Dancing. But we wouldn't go to the lodge at the shallow end of the lake. We would go to the public end, where my dad would park the car in a shady lane across the road from the boathouse that jutted out over the water, set on pylons that rested on the flat rock surface only feet underwater. And I would snorkel around the boathouse with my mom watching as my dad donned scuba gear and dove into the deep end of the lake that lay just beyond the sunlit shelf of rock, where the shelf ended and the abyss began. He said that there was a spring down there keeping the lake water cool and fresh. I wanted more than anything to dive over that edge and into that abyss and see for myself. 2. When I was 16 or 17, I professed I wanted to be a pastor, as I had wanted to study the Bible and religion more and more for years. So my grandmother gave me her entire collection of Dr. Oliver B. Greene's sermons and commentaries. I dove into them and quickly hit bottom with breakneck boredom. Then years later, I would study at Liberty University's local church certificate program at Colonial Baptist Church and hit the same bottom of wanting more. And then still years later, I would try being a missionary to Mexico and hit the same breakneck bottom of shallow-minded ministers and Catholic Mexicans that didn't need saving. Yet I kept searching the edge for that shallow shelf. 3 years later, Mountain Lake would disappear, dry up. When it did, they found a drowning victim from the 1920s and the spring that my father had told me was there, but there were also 4 drains that had developed through the sandstone boulder field that dammed up the valley. The permanence of the lake was false, was cyclical over generations. My father did not live to see the lake drain, for he was always donned with diving gear and seeking the depths of that deep end. It was always being fed by a spring. But for me now, I could at long last peer over that ledge of dry rock and into that void that was once the deep, dark abyss, and see in the full knowing of the light of day only mud. Thank you.
Our next reader is Pat Hardigree from Bordentown, New Jersey. Pat Hardigree. Thank you.
The poem is on page 123, if you guys want to go to that.
5 books.
My friend May sometimes told me about her childhood in New Orleans when she was a girl. May lived in a poor section. I'm sorry. I have to get this straight. May lived in a poor section, but they owned the land and house. Her family spent much time together, visiting and relaxing with each other. Every so often, with storms and high tides, the water came up to their porch. During that time, Grandpa went out on his rowboat and rowed from house to house, checking on friends, sharing what they could, or helping someone get home. May said the best part was when the water receded and dried out. The boat was cleaned and painted if needed, then put up on a rack in back of the house. Cousins came to visit them then, and the children ran around playing hide and seek and calling out to one another. And iced tea was served, cornbread. Excuse me, I lost my page. And Grandma set some of the bigger boys out to churn ice cream, and cornbread and iced tea was served. And the porch was crowded with blankets for the children sleeping under the stars. And sometimes their granddaddy and uncle would play the guitar and harmonica, and Trey came. And if Trey came, he played his horn. And they played and sang the old songs and some of the new music from New Orleans. And everyone was so happy, even though there might have been some fighting among the young men. And then everyone quieted down and began to turn in on bedrolls and such. And the children stayed outside, and the sky was filled with points of light. And May said she and her cousins never slept such sleep as on those nights. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Our next reader is Linda Hillringhouse from Verona, New Jersey. Let's welcome Linda.
Thanks, Maria. It's great to be here. New dress. I'm going to tell you something even I don't know, and I don't know how I'll find it, but I'm going somewhere, down into something, looking for that thing that I will finally tell you. And here comes a girl walking her way back to the living room, in which she will wait for her parents to come back from their first trip. She's wearing the dress, the heart-stopping, paralyzingly beautiful dress that Lenore, the neighbor, has bought her. Red plaid, big crinoline, and best of all, suspended from the belt, a real plastic pocket watch, forever displaying 7 o'clock. She is aglow, for when they behold her, this girl spring-loaded to flower, they will run to her, kiss her, lift her aloft into the galaxy of the ceiling, and she will see herself in their eyes and grow into someone alive in the miracle of the world who will take root joyously and in sorrow. She stands, arms outstretched like a supplicant or little model, and they are walking through the door, and her father picks her up, but unbelievably her mother walks past her, smiling in the full beauty of her days, at the neighbor, and past the dress like no other, and the thing that was known and not known became flesh, and I'm finally telling you that right there in Lenore's living room, time stopped and the future turned to dust.
Okay, and next, I don't know if I saw Ted. Ted Jonathan, North Bergen, New Jersey. Did I see him? No. Okay. Diane Corey, Cresskill, New Jersey.
My poem is Driving Lessons. Coach Hunt taught me to drive that fall. 5 or 6 lessons in the school's gray Chevy, Coach in a gray business suit, and I with Paul, the smartest boy in my class, sitting stiffly in that car. Coach, popular with the boys, droning on about what to do and how, sat in the passenger seat, the extra brake pedal near his foot. Paul took the wheel first, shifted into drive, pressed on the gas, turning the steering wheels timidly, awkwardly, moving oh so slowly. His uneasiness surprised me, so sure of himself in class. Then my turn, scared, but soon amazed when the big car moved and I was driving. In later lessons, Coach taught us 3-point turns, parking, driving on real roads where real drivers drove, including on the last day 9W, that fast road where kids from our school had died, like Jimmy's older brother, who once walked past me and smiled. The lessons with Coach ended, and my parents took over. Mother nervous, father impatient, both sure I wasn't ready, not willing to give me keys, not wanting me to grow up. Yet I learned to drive, went for my test, and despite parking 3 feet from the curb, despite my 5-point turn, the unsmiling tester in Lodi, name of Schreiber, not wanting to see me again, scored my test without saying a word and let me pass.
Next we have Wayne L. Miller from Ramsey, New Jersey.
Thank you, Maria. Watching my son graduate, The arena is filled with proud relatives watching their graduates march. Sit, stand, sit, listen to speeches, stand, walk to the stage, receive a paper, take a picture, walk back, sit, stand, march. Two big TV screens display each graduate as they shake hands with someone or other, along with a chyron detailing name and degree. The speeches admonish the graduates to accept life's challenges, to make new ones, to blaze trails, and implicitly, to not forget the university during its annual December charitable giving season and in their will. They may not be able to give a gym, but they can contribute to the general fund. New alumni receive a packet of coupons for discounted life and auto insurance, printing services, and other such opportunities. These graduates are young, cerebral executive functions still developing, going on to their jobs or graduate programs, or perhaps home to figure out what they want to do with their lives. What place might each of them have in the world? The luckier know their roles they were born to play: organizer, fighter, healer, storyteller, music maker. The luckiest find a path with adults leading the way, avoiding situations such as fighters who misfocus their energy or creators who remain undisciplined. From my distance in the stands, I can't see what the future offers any of them except for my son.
Obviously, Wayne is much taller than I am. Our next reader is Marion Paganello from Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Let's welcome her.
I need these. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Maria. My poem is called Stilled Chaos. Evening's rose-infused light washing over everything, every object in sharper delineation against an impossibly tender light, reminds me of moments of tenderness to which I have been both participant and witness. My mother, slowly running her fingertips up and down my back when she unbuttoned my school dress to be hung up and put back in my closet to keep it fresh for another wearing. My father, his bent knee supporting the chubby weight of my little sister, his arm enfolding her in a promise of protection, kissing the top of her head, his cheek resting on her corona of silky curls. My husband, darting into a store to buy the homeless man before him, his body a camouflage of grime and neglect, a simple pair of gray cotton shorts. I believe that we can push up from the depths of our freighted selves and reach out in communions of decency and kindness and redemptive offerings of every mercy. I believe that it is necessary to turn away from the clatter of all that external chaos, the carny barking of feckless leadership, that tendentious tinder of compulsive tweets, making us feel that we are one spark away from that final fire. What I am trying to get at, to return to, if ever I was there, is a moment of, yes, roseate hope, of breathless suspension and immeasurable trust, cocooned in a hush of perfect stillness.
Our next reader is Karen Lee Ramos from Oak Ridge, New Jersey.
Thank you. Good to see you. I had to print it really big instead of reading it from the book. I wrote this on the 4th of July last year. Pensando esta noche. I keep thinking about Evergisto and Graciela, names that mean amazing and grace. On a boat to America with everything they owned,
which was nada y nada. And I keep thinking about my husband, their youngest grandson, how my father refused to shake his hand when they met. And I keep thinking about the last time I was pulled over, how that cop looked in the car window, saw blonde hair, then smiled at my blue-eyed children buckled in the back seat, and I keep thinking about cages, small hands grasping chain link walls, trying to understand. And I keep thinking, ¿Qué están pensando esta noche? What are they thinking tonight? Thank you.
Next is Dana Robbins from Bronx, New York. Dana Robbins. On your way? Okay. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you, Maria, and it is so good to be here. It's an honor and a pleasure. This poem is in memory of my sister, Stephanie Rosenthal. It's called Portrait of the Artist as an Old Woman. My sister's neck is scrunched, and her head lays sideways on her shoulder, as if a Picasso painting has rearranged her body parts. Her small hands, splayed and stiff, can no longer hold her calligraphy pen, though supplies clutter her desk, waiting for a better day that never comes. Her face is caved in where she fell forward out of her wheelchair, broke the orbital bone. Fearful, she declined the surgery to fix it. Slumped in her wheelchair at the lunch table, she opens an eye when I walks in, smiles a lopsided smile. This is my baby sister. She introduces me to a woman who stares back blankly. I am making my peace with this, my sister says. Tells me she is trying to be a role model for the other inmates. She laughs, corrects herself. Patience. After a restless lifetime of addictions, there is no farther to fall. While she gums the roast beef hero we bring her, she asks about my children. By 3 o'clock, she fades like a radio signal out of range. I wheel her back to her room, bend to kiss her cheek, tell her I love her. The day before I am due to arrive to take her out for her 75th birthday, the staff tells us she said goodbye to the other patients, went into her room, stopped breathing. Did she cry out weakly, or did she manage the impossible feat of saving extra pills in her trembling hand? Did she simply make up her mind to die? When I identify the body, there is a ghost of a smile on the blue-veined marble of her face. Thank you.
Which I'm always afraid of myself. Okay, next we have, I don't know if he's here, Michael Rulli. I don't see him. You would see him if you were here. remember Michael? He called himself Faggot. He was so wonderful. When he wore his mother's fur coat, his mother died when he was quite young, and he used to wear his mother's fur coat, and he was so wonderful about it. It was an amazing thing. I'm sorry you're not here, Michael. I miss you. The next person is Margaret Sirocco from Montclair, New Jersey.
Thank you, Maria. I'll fix it. I'm good. There we go. This is about my daughter when she was a baby. It's called Learning to Use Her Voice. Her laugh can be evil, while her eyes twinkle with joy. Mama, she calls, and repeats, Mama, 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 never grating. Amused and curious and wonderfully curious, when she sings in falsetto, her eyebrows part slightly from the effort, and she sounds as sweet as a singing bird full of passion. She sings off tune, and it is lovely. When she is angry, her voice fills with rage and accusation and can puncture my heart, low-pitched and direct, never turning away. And when she is sad, her voice fills my belly like a pitcher slowly filling with liquid, then overflowing until tears run over both of us. Thank you.
Our next reader is Steve Smith from Pennington, New Jersey. Let's welcome Steve Smith.
Thank you, Maria. It's a real delight and honor to be here. Can you hear me? No? Okay.
You raise it higher for yourself. And the next person
How's that?
Remember to put it down.
My poem is on page 175. Remembering Tom Ford's teeth. I had $100. I had $500 to my name in 1981, plus a beat-up 1970 Volkswagen Beetle with 150,000 miles on it. When I drove from upstate New York to the pothole streets of the South Bronx with its graffiti-tagged tenements full of boarded-up windows, to meet the legendary scenic artist charge man Tom Ford and ask him for a job. I pulled up in front of Gossard's scene shop, where I saw a frumpy guy in spattered paint clothes with his back to me, bent over a 5-gallon paint bucket, groping around the bottom frantically with his hand. I coughed loudly and stammered, "Excuse me, sir, could you tell me where I could find Tom Ford?" The guy put the bucket down and turned towards me with a toothless grimace, a set of dentures dripping green paint in his hand. He squinted and muttered, "I'm Tom Ford, how can I help you?" Cringing, I croaked that I was looking for work, that some union carpenter friends of mine had recommended him. He told me to call the union office and find out when they would be giving the next apprenticeship exam. Then snapped, "Okay, kid, I have to get back to work now." And when the union called to let me know the test would be coming up in 4 weeks and that they would be taking only 3 people out of 100, I began a training regimen of drawing 4 hours a day, along with praying and biting my nails. I didn't expect I would see Tom again, but several months later, after taking the test, I was called to the union office to be interviewed by the apprenticeship test committee, and Tom was the committee member who interviewed me. He was sitting there at a table in a buttoned wool cardigan, vivid blue ascot and Greek sailor cap, my portfolio and test results in front of him. And I was so elated I almost jumped over the table and hugged him when he said, "You made it, kid. You can really draw. We need people like you." Then he smiled broadly at me with a beaming set of large, milky white teeth in his mouth. Thank you.
Our next reader is C.J. Southworth from Watertown, New York.
So some spend a lot of time just
making sure everything is right. And then some poems, you literally have a dream and wake up and write it down. And so when this one actually starts off with "I dreamt of you," that's literal. This was one of the latter ones. So at any rate, this is called "Love Song for the Worthy." I dreamt of you inside a castle in the middle of a mountain range, in a giant open room with a windowed wall looking out on the peaks. Cracked it along seams of wounds that would not heal, showed me the heart you hid inside, and I told you it was beautiful. You unscrewed the top of your skull, and there was a projector inside, and you showed me every reason you thought that I should run. And I looked down and saw wounds in the shape of stars on both of my knees, and I knew despite it all that I would fall to them for you, worship as at an altar. I take your broken, I take your flawed, I take your beautiful, and I gather them close to my chest because they are you, and I love them all. Thank you.
Okay, and next is Eileen Van Hook of Wanacue, New Jersey.
Thank you, Maria. I'm happy to be here. This poem is called Josie. The beautiful woman hosing down the driveway is my mother-in-law, Josie. She will not stop until every speck of dirt and tiny pebble is washed off that gleaming macadam. Josie grew up in a tiny house with her parents, a dozen siblings, and little else. When she became engaged to Frank, he gave her her first doll, and after they were married, built this house, which she polishes like a precious gem. She doesn't seem to resent the limitations he has placed on her by not teaching her how to drive, write a check, or grocery shop. She is not a princess in this palace. Every Thursday, the solid brick house is cleaned from top to bottom, including the beams in the basement, where there is a summer kitchen and a metal shower, used instead of the one on the main floor with its pristine maroon tiles. The refrigerator is emptied, scrubbed, and pulled out so that she can clean behind and beneath. The granite fireplace in the living room was only used once, when her eldest son and his friends had a few beers and decided a fire would be cool. All hell broke loose when my in-laws returned. My father-in-law spent hours scrubbing the soot stains while cursing his reckless son. The furniture, thank God, was protected from the smoke by plastic covers. So uncomfortable, no one sits in the living room. Life is lived in the kitchen, where on Sundays the men of the family gather round the table, drinking espresso laced with Sambuca, while homemade sauce bubbles in an old pot and braciole sizzles in a pan in preparation for the epic Sunday dinner served to a chorus of manja, manja. Married to a demanding husband, mother of 3 growing sons, Josie never stops. Cooking, cleaning, washing, and needlework fill her days. Her evenings are spent with her sister-in-law next door, smoking and drinking endless cups of coffee in front of a picture window. They look out into the darkness while their raspy voices recite the mantra of their fears for their children. We make light of their morbid worrying, unaware that their very worst fear is about to be realized, our world shattered like a picture window pierced by a bullet.
Next is Valerie Drack Weidman from Highland Park, New Jersey.
It's always, of course, a pleasure to see you. We were lucky, Maria not only gave a reading this year, but she also brought her artwork to our library. It was a really wonderful event. This is a poem in memory of my mother, Barbara Drock. She was the age of astronauts. John Glenn was hurled against the sky when my mother was making chicken soup for a 5-year-old with chicken pox. She was painting a portrait of her children before they took their first steps away from childhood when Armstrong was placing his boot on the moon. Astronaut John Young was learning to pilot the shuttle when my mother was navigating life after my father's death. She painted the stand off at Wounded Knee, married off children, painted the Middle East and Kent State massacre, a runaway girl kneeling in front of a wounded boy. She had grandchildren, survived a stroke, learned to paint with her left hand. Astronaut Young orbited the Earth 36 times in his craft, looking at the Earth from every angle, watching the sun pass its shadow and its light. My mother dressed with dignity, face declined with grace, and orbited earlier decades in her mind's eye. Met her mother on the upper floors, cooked with her, worried about her, went back to taking care of young children, saw them run across the floor, skates slung across their shoulders. She lifted off from Earth, she gazed at the moon and imagined what we would look like to an astronaut looking down. Thank you.
Next, and I don't know if I see her, is Irene Willis from Lenox, Massachusetts. Irene, haven't seen you in a long time, so I might be missing you. All right, and then last is Tamar Ashtot from Brooklyn, New York.
Thanks, Maria, for being you. This poem is called Today is All About Light and Dark. In church, the lights flicker, beckoning a Messiah for which we have gathered together. A manhole has just ignited into flames. Spasms of darkness throw shadows across the stained glass and sync with the crashes outside. Nitsuke Shange says the lights are unnerving. In Whole Foods, the brightness, the cleanness of the store are even more unnerving, beckoning a revolution to take back the neighborhood. A power outage floods the store with blackness, but there is no looting, no running, just one helping the other find Brussels sprouts and kale in the dark. On the subway later that evening, a woman begs for food, so I pull Chex Mix from my bag. The woman beckons God to bless me. I am named Sister by the man across from me. I should not have waited for your good example, sister, but I thank you for inspiring me. Salam alaikum. Thank you.
Okay, now I have a horrible suspicion that I see other people who are also in this issue, and did I miss you in some way? Is there anybody I didn't call who's supposed to read? Okay, let's give another round of applause for all the wonderful readers from PLR. And is that Paul? Would you like to read? Don't be shy. Okay.
Thank you for letting me up here. My poem is embedded actually in a book review, but it's here in its entirety, and it's the title poem to a translation volume, and it's called The Conscience of Trees. You must appeal to the conscience of trees. Their calm is the sign of confidence that you have coveted for ages, even with a budding mind. Their calm is doubt and probability of the probable, the omnivorous self of the world with messy hair now turning silver. Trees do not fear failure, rebellion, the cinder of time sifting into nothingness. Trees can see mortals, see our sins, see what consumes us. That's why trees cling to the sky with their branches high above.